Chapter 9 of Clouds Cover the Campus by Daniel A. Lord, S.J. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Chapter 9. And then it came over me that all my efforts to protect Morin were wasted. This was the last link in the chain that bound him. What would they do to me, I wondered, when I laid before them the missing evidence? In truth, I could say I had found it in my room, not in the laboratory. If I had still had the two... But I didn't have both, and that might clear me. "Wait!" I cried. Catching Dick, I commandeered his machine once more. In my room I caught up my pajama shirt, took the right object out of the pocket, and in a few seconds we were back in the lab. "Here," I said, trying to be offhand. "I almost forgot this. And now I'm afraid it's important." Paris Green held out his hand. When he saw what I had dropped into it, he fairly shrieked. "Important!" His voice was the rasp of a file. "Where did you get it?" "It was dropped in my room by the man who stole what he thought was the eyepiece." The others had crowded around. "Morin," said Shorty. "I never suspected anybody else." He turned on me savagely. "If he gets away." His voice had dropped to a thin line of barely audible speech. "I suppose you know what this means for you. Suppressing evidence." I knew all right. Only Paris Green had not seemed to react to my little bright bomb. With eyes that seemed half shut, he stood looking down at the French military uniform button without comment. Suddenly his head shot back with a jerk. "Can we use your machine?" he shot at Dick. At Dick's nod he said, "Come on then, we're calling on Morin." Only we didn't. We found his house dark, quiet, apparently sunk deep in sleep. Our insistent ring brought the housekeeper to the door, all padded dressing gown, 5-hour cold cream, annoyed vanity, and general indignation. No, her master was not in, hadn't been in for several hours. She thought he said he was going to the airfield to go over some plans. No, so far as she knew, the government message had not reached him. I felt infinitely relieved as I realized that Paris Green had now taken complete command, and I had only to follow his lead. "The airfield," he ordered. Through that steel, chilled gray that is pre-dawn, we dashed for the field. A solitary sentry barred our entrance, but stood aside as Green flashed his credentials. As we shot into the field, we saw a single light burning in the operating headquarters. Perhaps, I reasoned, Morin was there after all. Perhaps he had some explanation, something that would lift this horrible weight of guilt from his head. The door was locked. When we pounded for admission, a young lieutenant, looking very bored and very annoyed, opened the door. He smiled welcomingly when he saw what looked like company and invited us in, introducing himself as Lieutenant Philbin. No, Morin hadn't been there all evening. He supposed he was resting up before the heavy responsibility of the mass flight in the morning. "May I see the planes that are flying tomorrow?" Green asked, not needing to flash credentials this time. "Certainly," the lieutenant answered. "I can't go with you, but I'll get Sergeant Groves." Sergeant Groves had been dozing in an adjacent room. He came in, struggling to look wide awake and alert, and as if sleep had been the farthest thing from his desires. It was a magnificent performance, much too good to be convincing. With a powerful flash swinging bright golden circles before him, he led us to the first hangar, opened the long high doors, and snapped on the first light. Green's swift hand struck the lights off, and in the same gesture took the flash. I saw the sergeant instinctively reach for his sidearm. "Don't worry," Green reassured him, and we followed him through the darkness to the first machine. He clambered up and threw the light into the cockpit. "Okay," he said, almost disappointed. We swung along to the second plane. This time his response to his investigation was a satisfied grunt. He had found the lethal pipe. Their third plane was all right. The fourth and fifth were piped for poison. "No need to go further," he said. "Over half the planes are set." "Indeed, and they're all set!" the sergeant flared indignantly. "We've worked on them special. Rodriguez, as good a man with machines as I've ever seen, gave them a final overhauling this afternoon, and every one of them is ready to take off." Paris lifted a deprecating hand. "My mistake," he protested. "Sergeant, whoever fixed these machines did a magnificent job." It was all I could do to keep from shuddering when the sergeant growled, "Well, that's better. I really guess they're fixed." We cut back across the darkness to headquarters. As we drew near, we saw through the wide windows that Lieutenant Philbin was using the phone. He rang off just as we entered and looked up at us with a smile. "That was the chief instructor," he said. "Morin?" I think we all gasped the name in chorus. "Certainly," the lieutenant replied, looking a little surprised. "Where did he call from?" "From his house, of course. He said that he'd been working and was just turning in. Funny, though. He said that if by any chance he wasn't here tomorrow, the flight was to take off anyhow, with Lieutenant Allen in charge." Paris Green was across the room and gripping the phone. The clear, high-pitched voice of the night operator came through. "A call was just put through to this number." Green's swift eye picked it up from the circle on the phone holder, and he shot it into the phone. "Was it a local call?" A second's delay, and he was speaking with the supervisor. "No," she answered. "That was long distance. The person calling," she continued as Green shot fast questions, "wanted a station-to-station call and said that someone would be waiting. So we put it right through." Green hit the question we had all been waiting to hear. There was the briefest pause. Then the voice of the operator. "Ellisville." The call had come from a town not 25 miles away, on the Dixie Highway, south of our little campus town. My heart sank. Morin was gone, and with him the car that we knew so well. Green guessed our thoughts, for mine were the thoughts of all. "If by this time he hasn't, they haven't," I noticed the correction, "shifted to the car they mean to drive, or to a plane." "Anyway," I cried, "we don't know what direction he'll take." Shorty's drawling voice spoke. "South. Straight for New Orleans." He had a small notebook in his hand and was reading from it. "New Orleans reported to us 3 days ago, when we wired, that the Lorelei, steam up, ready to sail, has been waiting beyond sailing date." I was swallowed up in a kind of hopelessness. I could see it all so clearly, the swift flight of the car through the darkness, the shift to a waiting plane, the bomb sight, not complete, but perhaps complete enough to be of utmost service to the alien land, and we standing here, the dawn coming up, and the villainous Morin heading straight for a ship in safety. Meanwhile, Green had been talking into the phone to half a dozen different people, it seemed to me, issuing orders to block roads, cut off all suspicious-looking cars, watch for the official car that Morin had long driven, set star police on the highways. The rest of us just stood around, feeling that all this was futile if we were dealing with the brilliant mind that had thus far engineered every detail without a major slip. Then Dick suddenly took over. "Ellisville's 25 miles away," he said quietly. "Harry, can you get a plane up and cruise around and see what you can see? If you spot anything suspicious, we'll be following the Dixie Highway. In the meantime, what's a 25-mile start when we're driving my car and out to get our man?" Green shifted a gun from some invisible hiding place to his overcoat pocket. Shorty followed suit languidly. Green turned to us sharply. "I swear you into the service of the United States government for the next few hours," he said quietly. "Lieutenant, give each of them an automatic. Harry, roll out a plane. The sergeant will help you warm it up. We'll be following the Dixie Highway southward. Let's go." Dick and I sat in front. Paris Green and Shorty sat in back. If the intensive forward craning that suddenly characterized both of them could be called sitting. We ate up that first 25 miles in about 20 minutes. "Slow," moaned Dick, and pushed the accelerator further down. From the back seat, each one to a side of the car, the 2 FBI men turned flashes into every small side road we passed. We ate up another 25 miles, and another, and another. Then overhead we saw the lights of a plane. And as we flashed our lights on and off in signal, we saw the dip of the wings that was the answering wave from Harry as he cut off to the right and then back to the left in the wide circuit swings of his search. As we whirled by a small dirt road hidden in overgrown willows and scrubby trees, Paris let out a shout. Dick clamped on the brake with a furious screech of rubber and, not bothering to turn, drove back in reverse at a pace that made my blood run thin. There up the dirt road, half hidden in the shrubbery, was Morin's car. No doubt about that. We were out of the car, our guns poised, waiting for the fusillade we expected. But there was only silence, and the strange, chippery sounds of animal life that heralded the dawn. We charged down upon the car, flung open the doors, and found the inside empty as an open palm. No identifying insignia, and evidently the same expert hand that had deflated our tires had let all the air out of these. "They got into a plane or another car here," growled Green. But one look around told me it had been no plane. Heavy woods, underbrush, an orchard, a rise of hills, and a field of uncut cornstalks. No place for a plane to land or take off. It had been a car right enough. The dawning light plus the powerful flashlights showed us the clean-cut marks of new tires, and the little spurts of sand and gravel that are thrown up as a car moves onto concrete from the side of a road indicated the strength of the engine that propelled the car. "Powerful motor," said Green, voicing what we were all thinking. "Get going, Dick, and watch for a car with a powerful motor, new tires. Evidently a special job." We were off again, Dick cutting around the increasing number of metropolis-bound farmers' autos and heavy trucks, like an expert in an obstacle race. We passed creaking loads of vegetables, powerful transports, their lights burning dimly in the rising dawn, an occasional car, not worth our consideration, all wending their way casually, a little wearily, as they came to the end of the night. Dick fumed inwardly as the increasingly congested road cut our speed. Ahead of us lumbered a weary-looking old auto, its heavy brown canvas cutting off our view of the road ahead. "Confound it!" growled Dick. "A hill, too. Can't get ahead, can't get around. Have to crawl up the hill behind it." In impatient fury, we settled down to let the ancient truck take its way. The road was steep and long, but Dick's miraculous motor needed no shift into second. The car ahead kept rising steadily. Arrived at the top of the hill, we took one swift look around, saw that the road was clear, and shot off in pursuit of our phantom quarry. Dick talked grimly to himself as his car gathered speed. He often talked as he drove. It was the nervous release of a man who concentrates on his driving and lets words seep through his subconscious. "Thought that confounded car on the hill would hold us up. Awful looking old rattletrap. The kind that colors up a road, but I don't think we lost much." "Not much," I agreed, just to make conversation. "In fact, you didn't have to shift." "Neither did the fellow in the other car," he said absently, and sent the speedometer needle up to 90. "Neither did the fellow in the other car," I repeated chattily, thinking of rattletraps in general and how they usually clog up highways. "Neither did—" Against all the rules of safety I grabbed his arm. "Dick," I cried, "if a rattletrap doesn't have to shift gears on a steep, long hill, it's no rattletrap." "What?" he murmured, his eyes glued to the road. "That's the car, Dick. That's the car we saw in the ghost town tonight. The one that was carrying the broadcasting machine. I know it. I'm sure of it." I turned and shouted my suspicions to Paris and Shorty. Paris looked back. The rattletrap that wasn't a rattletrap was almost out of sight. But as we slowed down, it came moving along at a pace that was far from crippled. "Slow up," cried Paris, "but don't stop. When they're close on us, swing dead across the highway. Stay at the wheel and we'll take them." Dick did a masterly job of slowing down. The car behind us seemed to keep its distance for a time, then it gradually drew up on us. Paris and Shorty had crouched far down in the body of the car, so that only two of us could be seen. But I knew very well that if Morin saw the machine, he'd recognize it. Yet the car kept on following us, drawing nearer and nearer. When it was close enough for us to honk for a pass, Dick suddenly threw our car across the highway and stopped with a squeal of brakes. Even as Paris and Shorty jumped out, guns in hand, there was a shot from behind us as the car drove into the hood of our car, almost clearing the road for a passage. The rattletrap was past us, perhaps a dozen feet, when Paris shot dead into a rear tire, just where the tire meets the rim. There was a gasp of escaping air, and the car thundered out into the ditch and up the low embankment for a stall. We were on the machine before it stopped, on it with our guns thrust well inside, covering whatever was there. Next to the driver sat Rodriguez, his normally bronzed face yellow with fatigue and fear. Beside him sat Morin's chauffeur, both hands on the wheel and a look of surprise on his face. "What is this?" he said. and I realized that this was the first time I had heard him speak. Or was it? What was there even in those 3 words that sounded familiar? Paris was pointing the muzzle of his automatic straight at the chauffeur's heart. "Where's Morin?" he demanded. "Why?" replied the chauffeur, his face all guileless innocence. "At the university, I suppose. He sent me to pick up some supplies in the town ahead." He nodded in the direction of the metropolis, to which the highway approached. "He told me to be sure to be back in the early afternoon." That voice! Those familiar accents! But Morin was gone. We had picked up underlings again. Then Paris did something that threw me almost off my feet. He moved in a little closer to the chauffeur, the automatic touching his shirt, and said very quietly: "That's fine. I'm not interested in Morin. Major Anthony Klipkoff, in the name of the United States government, I arrest you for several murders, for the stealing of government property, and for sabotage on a scale that—" It all happened so fast that I could not follow it. With an upswing of his hand the Major had thrown Green and his gun aside. One leap and he was down the side of the machine and into the ditch. Another and he was scaling the low embankment, using our car for his shield, for all the world like an expert soldier taking cover. Rodriguez made the beginnings of a similar move, but I had him covered. Paris lay sprawled on the concrete road, his head split and bleeding from the force of his fall. Then into the picture charged a powerful truck. Eyes register fast in moments like this, and I knew that the man on the seat was the oil station proprietor, or his son or nephew that we had seen the night outside the plant. He shouted something that sounded like a command. It might easily have been some foreign word meaning jump. His truck leaped past, but I heard a gun bark just twice, and I saw the truck careen to the side of the road, plunge towards the embankment, and come to a sickening pause as it buried its long, low nose into the soft mud. Then I turned to see Shorty looking almost affectionately at his gun. "Take it easy," he said, "and don't rush 'em. They may still have some life in them, but I think I got 'em both." Later we learned that Shorty was the champion pistol shot of the entire FBI. We found Morin strapped and gagged and lying beside the bomb site under masses of burlap and camouflage packages of foodstuffs, ostensibly bound for market. He was completely unconscious and a very, very sick man. By this time Paris was on his feet again, shaking his head to get the dizziness out of it, and feeling a bit of a fool for the Major's near escape, to which he had been a party. Behind us on the road, traffic had begun to pile up, first angry, then curious, making a mess of everything by their inquisitiveness and helpless intrusion. State troopers cleared the tangle and took over the captured Rodriguez and the 2 dead men. Dick by turns drove the 2 cars into a side road and put me in charge of the one that carried Morin and the bomb site. Then Dick remounted his own car, with Shorty as his companion, and we set off in caravan for the university. Harris was with me, carefully working on the unconscious Morin. I had to talk. "So it was Morin's chauffeur who was the brains behind it," I said. "That," he answered casually, "became clear only when you showed me that button. It wasn't an officer's button, you see. It was the button of a private or a non-com. But up to that particular moment, it really meant nothing. It was just a lost button. But it ended up being the decisive evidence between Morin and Klipkoff." "And Morin?" I asked. Paris shook his head doubtfully. "I'll stake my reputation, such as it is, that he's not guilty. But we'll hear his story." It was Rodriguez who told the story most conclusively. Klipkoff had met him years ago in Brazil and asked him to enter the Secret Service and take a Portuguese name to hide his European ancestry. Klipkoff was an aviation officer transferred to the espionage department. His task was a simple one: so to frighten American parents that they would refuse to let their college sons, the best flying material in the world, take up aviation. How satisfactorily his program had been developed, and how well he had progressed, we knew quite too clearly. Then Klipkoff had received orders to get the bomb site. Knowing Morin well, old Short Circuit had been not in the least disturbed when Morin's chauffeur had come with a message on the evening of the murder. The plane outside the window on that night had been driven by Rodriguez, who had signaled a third conspirator, a fellow alien of Klipkoff, to be ready to receive the bomb site in the ghost town, which had been chosen as the most obvious hiding place. The allotment of tasks was simple. Klipkoff kept the leadership and management of all that occurred on the campus. To Rodriguez, because he was on the flying field, was entrusted the maneuvering of the desks. To the disguised officer at the filling station was given the care of matters in the ghost town. The bomb site obtained, and the mass flight doomed to certain ruin, they considered their work done. In the suburbs of the metropolis, toward which we had been heading, a plane had been ready to fly them to the waiting ship in New Orleans harbor. That plane we never saw. On word of the capture, it took off, and the Lorelei slipped down the Mississippi and safely out to sea. Fifth columnists, we casually call them, and we worry almost not at all about them. But as I listened to Rodriguez, who under pressure from Paris and Shorty pieced together the story bit by bit, I wondered how many more there were and how far our nation was being undermined by those who were working at our side and destroying as they worked. Morin was unconscious for almost another 24 hours. When he finally recovered, he talked freely and naturally. Klipkoff had joined him when with a few free Frenchmen he, Morin, had escaped from Marseilles and headed for the United States. During 5 years prior to that time, Klipkoff's assignment had been France. He was a supposed member of the French Air Force, posing as the most loyal Frenchman, madly eager to help any nation that would beat back the destroyer of his supposed country. He had called himself Dubois, so common a French name that Morin had not thought to question his identity, and he brought him along to the university. But when the others had gone that night, and I was sitting at Morin's bedside, he talked to me as he hadn't talked to them. "I am more guilty than you know," he cried, "than I dare let them guess. They have been easy with me, though of course I shall never again be of service to my country or to yours. But for the past week I suspected him. I knew that someone around me was to blame, someone who could reach others through me. I called him in, and he faced me down. That made me sure of my suspicions, and I told him I was applying for his arrest. Only then did he tell me what would follow if I made good my threat. I have a family, a wife, 4 children, 3 of them girls, and occupy France. A word from me, he said, and I could guess what would be their fate. From then on I felt I had to fight on alone, to do the thing myself, even if it meant. Even a soldier can't shoot a man in cold blood, yet it might have come to that." Now everything was clear, except the way in which Paris had found out the chauffeur's name. "Listen," he said when I asked him, "do magicians show you how they do their tricks? We'll leave some mystery and magic to the FBI. You did more than your share on this, but I'll take credit for that piece of abracadabra." So over coffee and sandwiches in our favorite shop, Julia May and I decided that we had seen enough of horror and death for a few days, and that if I was to get my degree, and we were to get the license to follow the degree, I should henceforth devote myself to the solution of scientific problems, and to her. Only the thought that Old Short Circuit's bomb site is now in the hands of our flyers makes me a little sure that we'll have here in America the peace necessary for the life of 2 Catholic pacifists like myself and Julia May. The End. End of Chapter 9. End of Clouds Cover the Campus by Daniel A. Lord, S.J.